The market lights hum like insects above her head. Her shoes are worn thin, her body is breaking, her son is waiting in the back room, and then the doors open and Death walks in wearing a black suit. He does not raise his voice, he does not need to. A bottle slips from his hand, shattering across the tile because 30 feet away stands a child with his face and a woman he buried in memory 5 years ago. From that moment on, every glance becomes a blade, every silence a confession. This is not just a reunion, it is the beginning of a beautiful catastrophe, one in which love, power, and parenthood collide so violently that somebody's heart is guaranteed to break.
The grocery store's fluorescence hummed, casting a sickly yellow pallor that mirrored her own deep fatigue. She stood on ruined sneakers, a hole in the sole, a constant reminder of how far she'd fallen in 3 months. The air, a foul blend of chemical cleaner and muted hopelessness, clung to everything. At 11:47 at night, her phone was a monument to her stalled life. An 8-hour shift of fake smiles and serving ghosts left her spine aching. "Do you have any more organic milk?" A woman, armored in the effortless wealth of a designer handbag and perfect manicure, shattered her trance. "I'll check," Emma rasped, rationing her voice like a scarce resource in the quiet of the late shift. She escaped into the stockroom, a brief shelter from the world. It had been 5 years, a half-decade since her life had fractured and sent her into this self-made prison. For 5 years, she had woven a lie for her son, pretending their poverty was a grand game. The organic milk was gone, of course. The impatient woman, from a world where waiting was an insult, had already left. Emma felt nothing. Then the automatic doors hissed open, sucking in the cold November night and the city's iron scent. She felt it first as a subtle change in the store's low energy, the electric stillness just before a storm breaks. Her coworker Denise simply froze mid-motion, her face a blank slate. 3 men entered, but it was 1 man flanked by 2 human mountains. Even from 50 feet, his suit radiated a power she had fled. The store's poor lighting seemed to warp around him, amplifying his aura of incredible wealth. It was impossible. Not after 5 years, not in a city holding 12 million people. Then he turned his head, and the sharp angle of his profile destroyed her denial. It was him. That dangerously sculpted jaw, the immaculate hair, all a perfect shell for the monster inside. Dante Moretti, in the flesh. His name was a curse that could ruin worlds. Her chest tightened, and the scanner in her hand became a lead weight. She ducked her head, trying to hide behind her plain hair, a desperate prayer in her mind. "He won't see you, you're not here." But it was a pointless lie. His eyes swept the aisles with the focused gaze of a hunter, and she knew he was searching. His companions were textbook heavies. One a massive wall of muscle with a neck wider than his head, an earpiece in his ear. The other was wiry, with sharp eyes that inventoried every exit and threat in a heartbeat. They weren't customers, they were his tools. And Dante moved with the deadly purpose she remembered, like a man who owned the very air he breathed. Men like Dante never just show up. Their arrivals are always deliberate. "Please, not me," she chanted silently. She pretended to be busy, her heart beating a frantic rhythm she was sure he could hear across the store. "Mommy." The word was a bomb that obliterated her world. She turned to see her son, their son, walking from the break room, a small dinosaur backpack bouncing on his back. Marco, the 5-year-old secret standing right there. "I'm done with my homework," his little voice echoed with terrible clarity in the near-empty store. The cruelest joke about children. Their volume rises when you need silence most. She didn't have to look. She felt Dante's attention snap to them. She raised her head. Dante stood 30 feet away, a water bottle a forgotten object in his hand. His gaze was locked on Marco. The boy was an almost perfect copy, the same jaw, the same nose, the same perfect dark hair. The boy even had his father's unsettling intensity, a strange thing to see in a 5-year-old. Time seemed to freeze. Dante's face was stone, but his eyes showed the violent shock of sudden understanding. He knew. His entire body went rigid, the posture of a predator that has just found its prey. The water bottle dropped from his hand, the plastic cracking against the tile like a gunshot. Water pooled around his expensive shoes, but Dante was unaware as his men moved to handle it. The larger man cleaned the spill, but Dante was a statue, his gaze finally traveling from the boy to her. Their eyes met, and the 5-year gap between them collapsed. She was 22 again, signing her life away in his gilded penthouse prison. She was back at 22, sobbing over a positive pregnancy test in a women's shelter. His father's death had changed him, burying the man she loved. Emma. He said her name, and the sound was a blade in the quiet air. Every other sound in the store vanished. Marco, confused, asked, "Mommy, who is that man?" Her body screamed at her to grab her son and run. But you could not run from Dante Moretti. He was already moving toward them, his men spreading out to trap them. She was suddenly aware of the store's other occupants, a silent, captive audience. Denise had a hand over her mouth. Her manager watched from his office doorway. "Emma," Dante repeated, his closeness now a physical threat. She could smell his cologne. That rich, smoky scent was a key, unlocking a past she had tried so hard to escape. "We need to talk," he said, his eyes going back to Marco. The look he gave the boy was cold and analytical, and it froze her blood. "No," she breathed. "No, we don't." Grabbing Marco's hand, she started backing away, her job instantly forgotten. "Emma." It was a summons, not a name, spoken with a calm that promised violence. "You failed to get away from me 5 years ago, and you will not get away now." Marco cried out, "Mommy, that hurts," making her grip go slack. Tears blurred her vision. How old is the boy? Dante was right there now, only the counter and her years of lies between them. His men were blocking the exits, a maneuver she recognized with a sickening jolt. The thinner man spoke into his phone, likely calling for more of them. "That's none of your business," she snapped, hating how her voice shook while Dante studied the child, calculating. "He has my eyes," Dante said, a statement of fact. Then Marco, in his heartbreaking innocence, announced, "My name is Marco James Carter, and I am 5 3/4. Carter. Her flimsy, useless alias had just been destroyed. "Marco," Dante repeated, his voice carefully neutral. Was he in awe, or was he furious? The not knowing was its own kind of hell. A strong name. He crouched down to the boy's level, and Emma's heart stopped beating. "Marco," he purred, "have you any idea who I am?" In that instant, she knew they were lost. Dante's kindness was always a weapon he used before a conquest. Marco simply shook his head. "No, sir. Are you a prince?" The child's innocence was so pure it was absurd. A prince. The bitter irony of it was suffocating. If only he knew the truth. Dante actually smiled, an expression she had fought to erase from her mind. "Not a prince," he said gently. "But I would very much like to get to know you, Marco." "You can't," she choked, moving to block him. "You lost that right." "Right?" Dante stood, the pleasant facade crumbling away. He loomed over her, 6 feet of barely contained fury. His voice turned to ice. "I believe your definition of a right and mine are very, very different." "Ex-wife," she shot back, her hands trembling. "A legal document," he whispered, his hand cupping her jaw. He forced her to meet his gaze, his touch a terrifying mix of softness and control. Did you really believe you could hide my son from me? He is not your son. The lie was acid on her tongue, but she said it as his grip tightened, a quiet promise of what he could do. It wasn't about pain. That was too simple for him. It was a lesson in control, a demonstration of his power and her complete lack of it. Do not. That single command was a crack of a whip in the air. Do not insult my intelligence, Emma. I am looking at my own eyes. I am looking at my own blood. His eyes flicked to Marco, who watched, confused. For a fraction of a second, a look of agony crossed Dante's face. 5 years! You stole 5 whole years of his life from me. You were busy, she retorted, pulling free. Building an empire on corpses. Was I supposed to bring a child into that? To teach him that cruelty is just another form of love? The second she said it, she knew it was a mistake. Dante's face became a blank void, a terrifying calm that meant he was making a cold, final calculation. We are leaving, he said, his voice a low command. The 3 of us. Now. Like hell we are. Emma. He leaned in, his breath a chill against her ear. You have 2 options. You can walk out of here with dignity, holding our son's hand, and we will have a quiet talk in my car. Or my man Luca can escort you both to a much less comfortable location. A deep cold settled in her bones. Do not test me. The words were silk over steel. I would love the chance to show you how I reclaim what is mine. Marco tugged on her sleeve. Mommy, I want to go home. He's scaring me. Home. Their tiny, broken apartment, a sanctuary whose sole purpose was to be free of Dante Moretti's influence, but his shadow had finally fallen over them. This moment was fated, a shadow she could never outrun. It was her own naivete to imagine a life free from him. It's okay, my love, she murmured, the lie a bitter taste in her mouth. Mommy and this gentleman just need to speak. About what? Grown-up things. Dante's palm came to rest against the curve of her spine. The contact seared her skin like a brand, a statement of possession that sickened and rooted her to the spot. Your mother and I are old friends, he purred, the mask of his public charm falling perfectly into place. It's just been a very long time. Oh, Marco replied, his face clearing with the simple faith of a 5-year-old. He was too little to understand that the most vicious predators wear expensive suits and speak with honeyed words. Are you her friend from before? Mommy never mentions that time. She says it makes her heart hurt. She saw the muscle in Dante's jaw harden, a storm gathering in his gaze. Was it pain or was it fury? With him, the 2 often looked the same. Yes, he answered, his voice tight. From a time before you were born. Tom, her manager of 8 months and a virtual stranger, scurried over, twisting his hands. Emma, is everything all right? Should I get security? Her mind screamed a silent plea for an authority that was useless here. For the FBI, for the entire Metropolitan Police Department. A cry for anyone with the rearward to make him stop. But who would heed that call? Who had the nerve to challenge Dante Moretti? The police commissioner was on his payroll, a dozen judges were in his debt, and the ones who weren't were smart enough to fear the man who held the city in an iron grip. Everything is perfectly all right, Dante answered for me, his smile a broad, hollow gesture. A lovely family reunion. I'm sure you have no problem with Emma leaving her shift early. He pulled out a black leather wallet and slid out several large bills. For any trouble? With a shaky hand, Tom accepted the cash, his eyes wide as saucers. Of course, mister. That won't be necessary, Dante cut in, stowing his wallet. Emma, we're leaving. It was a command, not a request. The November chill bit at us as we walked out to a black SUV idling at the curb. Not merely a car, but an armored Escalade with windows so black they devoured the light. A vehicle that broadcast both incredible power and immense threat. Luca, his wiry enforcer, pulled open the back door with a cool lack of emotion. The inside was another world of cream leather and soft light, luxurious and cold. I'm taking my own car, I said, a final useless act of defiance. We'll follow you. Your 2008 Honda, the one with the cracked taillight and the tags that are out of date? His tone was laced with amusement. I don't think so, Kara. Marco, why don't you get in? That's a good boy. He lifted our son in with ease as Marco's mouth fell open in wonder. Whoa, he breathed. It's like a spaceship. Even better, Dante promised him. Then his hand was on my arm, a steady pressure steering me to the vehicle. Emma, he murmured, don't make a scene. I did as he said. There was no other choice. Fighting back would only terrify Marco more. And because a small, traitorous piece of my soul, a part I'd tried for 5 years to kill, remembered how pointless it was to ever resist Dante Moretti. The door shut with a heavy final thud like a vault door being sealed. He slid in beside me, his leg brushing mine, his familiar cologne instantly filling the small space. The driver, a gray-haired older man built like a retired fighter, pulled into traffic without a sound. Where are we going? My voice felt frail and thin in the hushed interior. Somewhere private. Dante's attention was fixed on Marco, who was playing with the automatic windows. Do you like cars, Marco? Dinosaurs are way cooler, Marco stated with conviction. But cars are okay. Mommy said we might get a new one when she saves up enough money. I squeezed my eyes shut, heat flooding my face. My son was revealing our desperate secrets to the one man we'd given up everything to flee. Is that so? Dante's voice was like velvet pulled over steel. What other stories does Mommy tell you? She says we're adventurers in a big castle, but it's just our apartment on the 3rd floor and the elevator's broken, so we have to take the stairs. He added with a grin. Mommy says it builds character. Every word felt like another twist of a blade. I met Dante's gaze and saw something I had never witnessed before. It was a brutal mix of white-hot fury and what could only be described as profound agony. A 3rd floor walk-up, he repeated, his voice dangerously soft. Character building. We're doing fine, I managed through a tight jaw. I'm sure you are. His hand found mine in the dimness, his fingers lacing through mine in a possessive grip that stole my breath. You were always a fighter. You had to be, I imagine, raising my son by yourself, working. How many jobs, Emma? 2, 3? That's none of your business. It's all of my business. His grip tightened. Every meal I wasn't there to provide. Every birthday I missed. Every night you fought this battle alone when you should have been. He cut himself off, his jaw set like stone. The car turned onto a dark, private road where a thick overhang of trees blotted out the city lights. A familiar terror started a frantic beat against my ribs. Where are you taking us? I asked again. Trying to pull my hand free, he refused to let go. Your new home? No, turn this car around right now or I swear. You'll what? He turned to face me, a figure made of shadow and menace. I'll scream. We both know how that ends. You cause a scene. You terrorize our son. His thumb stroked my knuckles, a touch meant to be soft that burned my skin. You will sit here quietly. You will smile for Marco, and you will finally accept that your time running from me is over. You can't just, I can. It is already done. It's irreversible. I own this city, Emma. Every street, every building, every single person who matters. Did you honestly think you could hide from me here? That I wouldn't find you eventually? The realization hit me like a physical blow to the gut. You knew. You've known where I was this whole time. His smile was as cold as a tomb. I've known exactly where you were since the day you left that shelter 3 years ago. Did you really believe I didn't have eyes on you, that I would just let my wife walk away? Ex-wife, I breathed, but the word sounded empty. You signed the papers, he granted. Meaningless documents I put my name on when I was out of my mind. When grief had made me a monster I didn't even recognize. His stare hardened. But you never stopped being mine, cara mia. And neither did he. Marco was now fast asleep against the window, exhausted, his face peaceful and calm. The similarity to his father was a knife to my heart. Why now? I whispered. If you knew for 3 years, why show up tonight? Dante was quiet for a long moment. His gaze was locked on our sleeping son. When he finally answered, his voice was thick with an emotion I couldn't name. Because I spent 5 years building an empire that means absolutely nothing. 5 years crushing my enemies, taking power, making myself untouchable. For 0. Just to die alone in some sterile penthouse, surrounded by things I hate. He looked at me then. A sharp, direct gaze, and what I saw there scared me more than any anger he'd ever shown. Raw, unguarded pain. I buried my own father. I destroyed the men who crossed me. I have done everything I set out to achieve, and I am hollow, Emma, completely hollow. Until I walked into that cheap market tonight and saw my son for the first time. Dante, don't! He held up a hand to stop me. You'll have your turn to speak, but first you're going to see what I've built, what belongs to him, what I can give you if you would just stop fighting me. The car swept through huge iron gates that opened on their own, showing a long, lit driveway. At the end of it sat a masterpiece of modern design. This wasn't just a penthouse, it was a palace of glass and steel that shone like a lighthouse, a world away from their old life, bigger, more isolated, and built entirely in his image. Then he said it, his voice perfectly calm. Welcome home, Emma. I've been waiting for you. The mansion's entrance hall was cavernous, with high ceilings and marble floors that echoed her every step, making her feel small. Dante cradled Marco, the tenderness of the gesture a jarring contrast to the killer she knew. Their boy was limp against his shoulder. Meanwhile, Luca and another massive man flanked her. She was less a guest than a prisoner being led to her cell. First door on the right, Dante said, his voice completely normal. The bedroom is ready. She shot back. Ready? How can it be ready? You just found us tonight. He looked over his shoulder, and for a second, a flicker of something crossed his face. Was it remorse or just raw shame? This room has been waiting for 3 years, Emma. From the moment I knew you carried my son. His words were a hammer blow, splintering her composure. He revealed a prince's chamber, a bed shaped like a race car, with shelves overflowing with luxuries she could only dream of. By the window, a telescope aimed at the stars. An art station filled a desk built for small hands. It was a 5-year-old's perfect world, a fantasy untouched by its intended owner. Dante placed Marco on the bed with an agonizing tenderness, draping him in a throw that could cover her rent for months. He watched the boy sleep, his hand hovering over Marco's head, suspended between desire and the fear it was all a mirage. He makes a sound when he breathes out, Dante said softly, a quiet observation. Allergies, she breathed back, the word barely a sound. A raw torment was etched into his features. The reality was colder. He had consumed every document, from school records to library logs. He knew his son loved orange, feared the sound of thunder, and begged for a dog she could not give him. Every fact was an indictment, a silent testament to the life he was refused. Yet in her heart, the choice had been hers alone to make. As he faced her, the mask of his composure finally cracked. My own flesh, my son. Did you think I would let him live without my knowledge of his every breath? She retorted, You allowed me to go. You never fought the separation. His admission came out as a choked gasp. I was going under. My father's blood was still on my hands. Not a metaphor. Your eyes saw a beast in me. You were terrified. His tone frayed, his jaw clenching against the memory. And I knew you were right. That monster was me. It still is. So I let you walk away, thinking it was the only path to your safety. Then, 3 months on, my people confirmed the pregnancy, and I... His words died, his frame going taut as he turned from her. You what? She pushed, her voice a thread. I tore my office apart, he stated, his voice devoid of emotion. Through the dusk over, broke the window. Luca had to hold me down to keep me from bringing you back. He speaks of a dark possessiveness, a golden prison he insists would have killed her affection. Her fists tighten to stop their tremor as she challenges his 5-year watch, a count he corrects to a precise 3. For 2 of those years, he concedes, she had vanished beyond his reach. He then discloses the secret vigil that followed, a quiet manipulation of her world with Marco, down to settling with the landlord to stop them being thrown out. The cold scope of his interference becomes clear, sabotaging a colleague's vehicle. She remembers Marcus, a cook trekking home at 2 a.m, but Dante's lethal murmur paints it as a threat he had to violently neutralize. She recalls how Marcus simply vanished, how she assumed he'd just quit. A cruel smile touches Dante's lips as he explains. A forced relocation to Seattle, his influence total and his solutions chillingly final. They moved to his private study, a room of dark timber, worn leather, and a blazing hearth, all symbols of his authority. His instruction to sit is a play for power, one she counters with silent refusal. He offers 2 tumblers of scotch, a veneer of civility she defies. She accepts the glass but stays on her feet, dismissing the pretense of talk and calling it what it was. A planned seizure from her job. Her challenge, an invitation delivered by gunmen, intensifies. But her raised tone falters with a pang of fear for Marco. Dante's answer is pure control. He drains his glass, then moves toward her with a hunter's deliberate grace. Her backward step is halted when he traps her against the shelves, closing the space between them completely. He paints his fixation as his own private torment, forced to witness her hardship when his might could erase it. She spurns his money, a position he grants by remembering she departed with nothing but her dignity. His hand on her face, a soft caress, is a brutal contradiction to the cage of intimidation he has built around her. Can he comprehend the madness of her decision in his reality? She claims no uniqueness, only her refusal to be the wife of a murderer. The raw declaration lingers, drawing a brief spark of understanding from him. He yields, then skillfully shifts the ground to their common role as parents. That bond, he argues, is stronger than any paper decree, leveraging their child to reframe their relationship and his right to her existence. His language is plain, but it lands with the force of a feudal demand. He contrasts his son's need for safety with her world. 3 flights of stairs, and a building owner he pays in the shadows. His voice is soft, but his words are sharp, cutting into her 16-hour shifts and precarious finances. He mentions Marco's small coat and her own missed meals, questioning the virtue of her difficult, righteous life. She defends their life as decent and their own, but he diagnoses it clinically. It's destroying you. He proves his point by brushing away a tear, then studying her rough hands, proof of a life he will not permit her to live. She argues that people can change, but he calls it being shattered. He presses his lips to her palm in a gesture of ownership, then offers Marco a rescue she knows carries an unstated, ruinous cost. His stated cost is just to see his son, the opportunity to be a father, a premise she rejects on instinct. He follows with a planned confession, admitting this is only the first move toward his ultimate goal. He states his final aim, her, back in his house, under his watch, and subject to his rule. He presents it as something he must earn, a display of restraint meant to soften her while she wonders if he is different. Is the man transformed, or is the beast simply more polished? He now directs his savage urges, using them with lethal focus, but the predator within is untouched, a truth his intense stare confirms absolutely. His phone's interruption, a fluid part of his own volition, highlights the fact. A quick look, a short response, and he is connected back to the brutal empire he rules. Her query gets the expected reply. Always. He brings up the matter of a security team, a thought that makes her insides clench. Citing unseen enemies, he recasts the last 5 years as a time of hidden peril, a danger that has now enveloped Marco. Her frantic idea of running is instantly cast aside as a dream. He lays out 2 futures, his enemies finding them or their continued existence under his watch. A perfect safety that looks exactly like a jail. She calls his offer a prison. He renames it a family. He dangles 12 rooms, a separate wing, and the finest things for Marco, wrapping the truth of her captivity in the pretense of a choice. His grant of time to consider is an empty show of grace. A warning bell made louder when he reveals her room, opposite Marco's, has been waiting for her this entire time. He knows her clothing measurements, a detail delivered as both promise and menace. When his lieutenant Luca appears, all discussion is over and the lockdown begins, his power made real. His commands are final. The second story is for Emma and Marco alone. When she asks how many men with guns are inside, the answer is terrifyingly simple. Enough to keep her secure. He sees her fear but gives no comfort, instead stepping in to draw her into his arms. His oath to set the city ablaze for their sake is at once a shield and a display of horrifying power. Her allotted room is a lavish cell with every element from silk bedding to curated outfits, speaking to his obsessive foresight. It is a show of riches designed to intimidate and possess. She passes the night awake, observing the workings of her gilded prison. Seeing 6 armed men on patrol, knowing more lurked unseen, cements the absolute nature of her confinement. The prison imagery crystallizes in her thoughts. At 7 a.m., the sound of her son's voice cuts the silence, the one defenseless pawn that determines her every move on this board. The viewpoint shatters here, exposing the child's innocence. Marco's main worry is not their capture. It's the prince man's offered pancakes, a brutal counterpoint to his mother's fear. Dante then plays the part of a domestic dad, calling out to check on breakfast. Marco's eager reply is set against Emma's disbelief at Dante's casual clothes, a calculated adjustment of his persona. The relaxed disguise is undone by the firearm resting on his hip. His look toward Marco shows a true, though proprietary, yearning, before he leads them to a kitchen likely worth more than her lifetime wages. At the estate's center, the housekeeper, Maria, commands the kitchen. Here, Dante makes his first public play, a hand on Emma's back serving as a quiet claim. He presents Emma, then reveals Marco, a purposeful display for a trusted servant, cementing the foundation of his new dynasty. For a split second, Maria's practiced facade shatters. A raw shock flashes in her eyes before the servant's mask snaps back into place. The welcome she presents, a spread fit for an army, speaks to the estate's preparedness, a lavish spectacle of plenty designed to stun and absorb them. Utter wonder renders Marco speechless. Dante, with fluid grace, hoists the child onto a stool, affirming the lavish scene is his alone. Emma watches this strange theater of paternal affection, seeing their captor bask in their son's delight. A brilliant twisting of reality is underway. Emma studies a man playing a part he was destined for, as if he'd spent a lifetime memorizing this fatherly script. Maria shatters the delicate scene with coffee and a piercingly sharp remark. You seem as if your whole world has been turned upside down. It was a brutal anchor to her new existence. Maria then pulls back the veil, admitting she's never seen Mr. Moretti like this, that this very scene was the result of a slow, deliberate plan. It wasn't a sudden whim, but a conquest engineered with precision. The lingering question, was this a carefully laid trap or just a nest being built? The moment Emma entertains the thought that he might be less of a monster, her link to her former life buzzes in her pocket. Her roommate Jenna had tried calling 3 times, followed by a flood of texts. Her growing alarm was now threatening to involve the police. The world she left behind was clawing its way in. The last text delivers a firm threat. The police would be next. And just then, Dante appears at her side, his quiet stillness more disturbing than any rage. He directs her to soothe her friend with a fabricated story of an old friend, a fiction meant to diffuse the danger from her past. Next, he gives a command that allows no argument. She will not disclose her whereabouts. He presents this seclusion as essential protection for Marco, preying on the recklessness of the world beyond their walls. A textbook move of manipulative power, cutting her off from everyone under the pretense of safety. The most unsettling thing was the sliver of sense buried in his warped reasoning, a logic she despised yet couldn't fully ignore. In the hallway, she parrots Dante's lines to Jenna, whose doubtful voice betrays a suspicion too dangerous to speak. Jenna secures a vow for her safety and a daily check-in. But when Emma re-enters the kitchen, the entire mood has shifted dramatically. Marco is giving an enthusiastic speech about dinosaurs, and Dante is captivated, his probing questions causing their son to beam with self-importance. The shift in feeling is jarring. While Marco explains why the Spinosaurus was greater than the Tyrannosaurus Rex, Dante's eyes find Emma's over their son's head. In that quiet glance, they are no longer jailer and prisoner, but partners, joined by reverence for the little boy they made. He applauds Marco's knowledge, declaring him an expert. I've read almost all the dinosaur books in the world, Marco announced through a mouthful of pancake. Do you own any books? A library, Dante amended, his tone heavy with a proud sense of ownership. Do you want to see? It was a sanctuary of books, 2 floors tall, with winding stairs and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out on vast gardens. Countless volumes filled the shelves, a library built over generations. Marco's gasp of wonder resounded in the immense space. It's exactly like Beauty and the Beast, he yelled, darting to the closest bookcase. Mommy, look! Emma looked, but her attention was fixed on Dante, who tracked Marco's every move with a focus verging on fixation. The second floor has a section for children, he stated, his tone disturbingly gentle. I had it made just for him. Learning books, illustrated stories, nothing was overlooked. You've considered every detail. I had 3 years to prepare, Emma, 3 years picturing this exact moment. He stepped nearer, his voice dropping. 3 years asking myself if I'd be his father or just a ghost in his world. And you think that will make me feel sorry for you? Her words came out harsher than she meant. You're the one who stayed away. To do what? He shot back. Shove myself into a life I was already ruining? When the ghost of my father's murder still stole my sleep? His jaw clenched. My absence was a form of worship. Because the man I was turning into was not a man you could ever love. Don't confuse my absence with apathy. From the floor above, Marco shouted, Mommy, I found a reading fort. Go on, Dante said softly. Go to him. I need to make some calls. She climbed the spiral stairs and discovered a flawless haven for a child, a corner brimming with cushions and warm light. Marco was already engrossed in a book on space. Can we live here, Mommy? He asked, his gaze glued to the book. Only for a little bit. I really like it here. Her determination cracked a little more. We'll see, honey. The prince man is very nice, and he promised I can get a dog, a big one like a German shepherd. Marco's look was now a straightforward appeal. But how to tell him the prince man was a mafia boss? That all this luxury was paid for with blood? That remaining meant becoming part of his life? Then she caught it. Angry voices downstairs, silenced by Dante's icy order. I don't give a damn what Castellano wants. His time to bargain is over. She left Marco and stole down the stairs, hiding in the library's gloom. Dante was in the entrance hall with 3 strangers, their expensive suits screaming danger. Luca stood by, his hand hovering near his gun. He's threatening to go to the commission, one of them stated. Says you broke the treaty when you took the waterfront. That treaty was buried with my father, Dante replied, his tone frigid. If Castellano has a problem with how I operate, he can bring it to me. He should probably update his will beforehand. Sir, that's enough. With a sharp slice of his hand, Dante cut the man off. Tell Castellano he has 48 hours to get off the docks. After that, anyone still there is a matter for me to handle personally. The men looked shaken, but knew better than to object. As they left, his eyes found her in the shadows. For an instant, the persona of the powerful crime lord fell away, showing the weary man underneath, collapsing from the strain of his kingdom. How much of that did you hear? He asked when they were alone. Enough, she answered, stepping out of the gloom. This is what you wanted me to witness, the life you planned to pull Marco into. This is the world he's already a part of, whether you like it or not. He moved toward her like a hunter. The second he was born as my son, he was marked. Moving to a new house doesn't change that. Here, I can at least protect him from your threats, and from my own. His hands cupped her face, his thumbs stroking her skin. I know you hate this. I know you want another life. But this is the life we have, Emma. I'm begging you, let me protect you both. And if I say no? His face turned to stone in a heartbeat. Then I'll get a court to recognize my rights as a father and fight for sole custody. I will bury you in legal bills you can't afford, pull you through a system I own, and I will triumph, because I never lose what matters. His tone became gentle again. Please don't make me go that route. Don't turn this into a battle. "It's been a battle all along," she breathed. "You just didn't realize you'd already conquered me." Something new sparked in his gaze. It was the expression of a winner, yet it was poisoned by an emotion that looked a lot like remorse. The sound of little feet on the stairs shattered the moment. Marco came into view, clutching his book about stars. "Mommy, can we go play? The garden is huge." Dante drew back, the cold-blooded boss vanishing behind the loving dad. "Absolutely. I'll have Luca go with you. There's a hedge maze that you'll enjoy, and a pond full of koi fish." As they walked to the door, Dante took her by the wrist. "Tonight," he whispered, "when Marco is sleeping, we need to talk at length about the future, about the three of us." He said it like a promise. It sounded like a prison term. It sounded like destiny. In the afternoon light, the maze was a wonder of design, its flawless shrubs forming a gorgeous enclosed puzzle. Marco charged into it with a child's endless bravery, while Luca followed, his eyes scanning for dangers a 5-year-old could never see. Her eyes should have been on her son, but her mind was lost in the coming talk and the terrifying thought that this stunning cage was starting to feel safe. This is the way it starts, she realized. A gradual wearing down of your spirit with little kindnesses until one morning you wake up and don't remember there was ever a way out. "Mommy, look, fish!" Marco had his face to the fountain, captivated by the vibrant koi. "They're so pretty. Can I give them food?" "I don't know. The food is in the bronze box near the bench," Luca cut in, his tone surprisingly soft for a man who was almost certainly a murderer. "Mr. Moretti gives them their food every morning." Of course he would. In Dante's universe, even the fish were tended to, guarded, and possessed. She saw Marco toss food on the surface, his happy screams bouncing off the tall garden walls, and felt the old ache in her eyes. How long had it been since she'd heard him laugh so freely, without the burden of their unstable existence? The first cracked spiderwebs across the flawless marble of her composure. Luca's pronouncement, "You're crying," is an indictment, not an inquiry. Her denial is a ghost of a reflex, but the name he speaks, Mrs. Moretti, is a specter she has fled for 5 long years. It is an epitaph she carved herself, now unearthed by a subordinate who grants her the clemency her husband, Mr. Moretti, never would. We are left with 2 stark images, his ringed hand and her bare finger. His is a brand of unending possession, a silent vow to the world that his claim is absolute. Hers is a void, the ghost of a desperate and ultimately hollow act of severance. The platinum band she left on his dresser was no mere trinket. It was a manacle she thought she could shed, a futile gesture against a bond forged in fire. Her plea for him to find another is an act of self-erasure, a confession that she is unfit for his savage world. Luca's reply, however, is a testament to the faith surrounding Dante. "Some people are worth the wait." This is no romance, it is doctrine. The sudden chime of a text from Jenna is a gunshot, shattering the scene and dragging her back to a reality where fear wears a more common face. The code word is a frayed lifeline to a life before, a blood pact made after her first escape. It is the kill switch for this new, fragile existence. Her hesitation is born not of the chaos that would follow, the sirens, the antiseptic questions, but of a deeper, more primal terror. To use it is to declare a war she has already tasted defeat in once before. Here, we see the architecture of her cage. His power is not just in his fists, but in the system itself. With the law tethered to his wrist, any cry for help would be dismissed as hysteria, a fatal blow to her claim in the custody war to come. The lie she types, "I'm fine," is a calculated surrender, a choice to stay inside the gilded prison to shield her son, Marco. The dinner that follows is not a meal, but pure stagecraft. The scene is a chilling performance of domestic bliss, a pantomime of normalcy played out against a backdrop of violence. The roasted chicken, the seating arrangement, Dante enthroned at the head, all compose a perfect twisted family picture, a portrait meant to paint over the brutal truth simmering just below. When Dante speaks to his son, his focus is complete, but his words carry a second edge. Praising her for Marco's reading skills is a deliberate strike. It is a flex of his omniscience, a quiet boast that even in her 5-year exile, she never truly left his sight. The compliment is a weapon wrapped in velvet, reminding her of his inescapable control. Her shock is met with the quiet horror of her worst fear confirmed. "I knew everything about you, Kara. I still do." With that, he shifts from a memory to an ever-present warden. Her freedom was never real, only a longer leash. Using her old name as an intimate conquest, a soft-spoken erasure of the woman she fought to become. After the meal, exhaustion finally takes Marco. The sheer scale of the bathroom, larger than their entire old apartment, is a form of opulent seduction. The vanilla soap and the impossibly soft towel are not just comforts, they are tools for the gentle brainwashing of a child. Marco, lost in sleep in a dreamlike race car bed, voices the tragic heart of their plight. To him this is a palace, to her it is a fortress. Can we stay? The question, asked with his father's eyes, is the blade on which her soul is balanced. How can she explain to a child that this safety is a trap, that this comfort is bought with her own submission? Her whispered vow, "We'll figure it out tomorrow," is a fragile armistice, a silent prayer against a choice between surrender and a war that would consume him. She finds Dante in his study, the heart of his power. The roaring fire and 2 glasses of wine are not an invitation, but the setting for an execution. He has shed the skin of the father for that of the predator, sleeves rolled up his forearms in frank display of raw power. His gesture to sit is not a request, but a summons before the judge. She takes the wine, a liquid shield for the coming confrontation. When Dante remarks on their son's happiness, she answers with the acidic truth of a life on boxed macaroni and cheese. It is a verbal dagger meant to remind him of the destitution he created. His command, "Emma, stop," is an iron fist closing around the narrative. She refuses the gag, defining the new reality herself. This is a deal. It is a final, desperate gambit to bleed the moment of emotion, to frame her return as a cold, hard transaction. By demanding his price, she forces him into the role of the buyer and her the goods, laying bare the brutal mechanics of their reunion. His face, for a moment in the firelight, flickers with something other than steel. His answer is no negotiation. It is the terms of an unconditional surrender. "I want it all," he declares, his vision one of absolute restoration. He lists his demands like a conquering king, his son, her in his bed, and his ring back on her finger. The final turn of the screw, "This time you'll mean it," reveals his true ambition. Not her body, but her soul. The sheer audacity of his claim leaves her breathless. He moves toward her like a hunter, his past patience revealed not as virtue, but as a long, strategic siege. The 5-year wait was not an absence, but a tightening perimeter. His hands finding her waist are an echo of a past life, a physical claim he never for a moment considered forfeit. Here, he lets her see the violence coiled beneath his skin, speaking of an urge to simply take her by force. The words are of conquest. "Throw you over my shoulder." He speaks of demolition, not persuasion. "Not to what?" she whispers, her question a lit match. His eyes darken as he continues, the confession itself a weaponized display of his restraint. He speaks of a need to smash every wall and own you so completely that the very idea of escape becomes unthinkable. A traitorous warmth spreads through her, the body's memory of its captor. Instead of recoiling, she leans into the fall. Her breathy challenge, "That's not love," is a last shield against the terrifying allure of his power. Its obsession, he admits, then corrects. It was always both. He does not excuse his sickness. He redefines it as love's twin. The kiss that follows is not affection. It is a branding. It is 5 years of fury and longing delivered in a brutal collision, meant to shatter her will, and to her horror she feels herself begin to break. In that instant, her body betrays her mind. Her hands fist his shirt, pulling him closer, while every rational thought screams to be free. This is the schism of her soul, the body conditioned to his touch, the mind scarred by its cost. When they break apart, the gasps for air are the only sound in the ruins of her resistance. With her walls breached, Dante shifts his attack from force to a poisoned sword of reason. His forehead pressed to hers, he whispers, "Stay." He masterfully reframes his will as her choice, daring her to find a single thread of her own desire in it. Her admission, "I don't know what I want anymore," is the sound of her surrender. He offers the killing blow, "Let me show you." The 3-month ultimatum is a masterstroke of manipulation. It offers the illusion of a choice, a trial run that masks the permanence of her capture. His promise to let her go with her future secured is the perfect gilded cage. It makes staying the only logical path, a strategic retreat disguised as a temporary truce. His offer to surrender custody was not a concession, but a radical rewriting of his love. His touch, a careful study in restrained power, promised he would burn the world to keep them safe. A devotion so complete it had once been mistaken for mere control. He remade her not as his weakness, but as the very sun his world orbited. Her tears were a cleansing storm, followed by a fragile attempt to draw a new border between them. His tragic smile was an admission of the gulf, clarifying his fight was for their shared life, not just her body. 3 months pass. The scene opens on sunlight hitting a diamond on her left hand, a brilliant symbol of her formal surrender. The ring's weight is a physical, constant reminder of her new reality, forged by a proposal that used their son as the final, unbreakable lock. Marco's delight about his father joining a school trip is the final proof of Dante's victory. The word dad, once a battleground, is now spoken with easy love, a title Dante has, by the chilling logic of this world, meticulously earned through a war of attrition and will. Dante materializes, a vision of paternal might in a suit worth more than all her prior modes of travel. The kiss he places on her temple is no longer a measured move, but a familiar mark of possession, an affection now rendered commonplace. That simple touch which once sparked terror now feels like a return home, irrefutable evidence of his method's success. Her light-hearted query on the school trip receives his assent, but the mention of Luca serves as a low hum of warning. His machinery of power is ever present beneath the idyllic surface. "They're monsters," he quips about the young children, a fleeting moment of humor that contradicts the formidable control he commands. Her unforced laugh is the final note in her song of capitulation. These last 3 months were a slow siege on her autonomy, with Dante's patience and deference serving as the very instruments of its disassembly. Gradually, the defenses she built crumbled under his steady, gentle assault. Quiet dinners gave way to late-night talks. Deliberate distance yielded to lingering contact. The guest room's purpose shifted from a haven to a relic of a resistance that felt entirely feudal. Dante's pivot to business affairs exposes the true duality of the man she now accepts. His assurance that a deal with Castano will resolve without violence, or that Marco will be safe if it doesn't, forms the bedrock of their new understanding. It gives her the license to segregate his brutality, enjoying his world's comforts while dismissing its savage underpinnings. He has honored his pledge, erecting a flawless sanctuary on a foundation of unspoken atrocities. When Maria notes, "You seem at peace," she can only concede the fact. This tranquility, once inconceivable, is now her life. The housekeeper's parting words offer a startlingly keen diagnosis. Mr. Moretti has waged war for you since the day you were gone. It was never a romance. It was a relentless 5-year campaign for her very soul. A conflict he has, by all accounts, utterly won. Her phone buzzed. Jenna's name lit the screen. She'd finally agreed to meet for coffee last week to tell the impossible story. Or at least a carefully edited one. Jenna knew about Dante and Marco wanting to reconnect. The darker machinations of her homecoming remained unspoken. "Well," Jenna's voice was insistent. "Did you say yes?" Her gaze fell to the ring, catching the light in a house she now called home, with the man from whom she had once escaped. "I said yes," she breathed. Jenna's subsequent squeal made her pull the receiver from her ear. That night, after Marco was asleep, she found Dante in their bedroom, the master suite she had claimed for only 2 weeks, not the guest room. He was by the window, still in his trousers, his back bare. Lamplight traced the intricate map of scars across his back, a history of a past she was slowly learning to accept. "How did the meeting go?" she asked, the door clicking shut. "It's done," he replied, turning toward her, the tension still clinging to his frame. "Cleanly, like I promised. But I expect Castano will make a move, eventually." The violent outer world is mentioned and then immediately sealed off from the sanctity of their private space. His attention shifts entirely to the domestic, a realm she now invites him to enter with a clear physical overture. The kiss that follows is different, a measure of their renegotiated pact, deliberate and deep. This embrace is freighted with a history of unearthed trust, a love excavated from its own ruin. When he lifts her, it is an act of restoration, not ownership, a return to a feeling she now equates with home. His whispered words are a confession of unyielding devotion, which she receives with eyes wide open. Her response accepts the essential truth. Their love is a shelter and a willing condemnation. I love you too. Later, wrapped in silk with Dante's arm draped over her, she retraced the winding road that led them here. The agony, the fear, the careful rebuilding of trust, and the knowledge that love is never enough, but that will, tireless work, and the desperate desire to be better could heal any wound. After a time, Dante asks what she is thinking. She tells him simply that she is happy, that their son is happy, and that maybe this whole impossible situation was their destiny all along. His reply, "Took you long enough to see it." Arrogant, but not entirely wrong. She takes in the view of the compound, its manicured gardens, the maze, the fortress-like walls, and the dangerous city beyond. She understands that in this room, with the man who spent 5 years bringing her back, she is completely safe. She decides this is where she belongs. And when the sun appears and Marco slips into their bed, fitting himself between them like it is his rightful place, she knows they made the only possible choice. This violent, deeply wrong abduction had impossibly worked. They are finally a family. You could not make a story like this up.